Hello everybody, Ricky here from Design Plus Code. And today, you will be learning how to make your first game sound from scratch using plugins and samples. UI sounds play a big role in how users connect to your app or game. We'll use the right combination of plugins, samples, and imagination to make your sounds speak to your users. We will also learn the basics to using EQ and compression to add sheen and balance to your sound. In creating our first UI sound, I will mostly keep the effects to the stock Steinberg plugins. As the course evolves, we will start using more complex and advanced plugins. To follow this tutorial, you'll need Steinberg Cubase Pro and the FabFilter bundle. You could download the demo version of FabFilter and Steinberg LE Elements if you don't have the full versions here. You can also download the final project, which will help you compare with your own progress. Before we start, I'd like to talk to you about organizing your projects. Your projects can easily become cluttered and disorganized. A good practice is to group all of your similar tracks and effects for easy recall and organization. Folder grouping your tracks is a great way to keep your tracks well organized within the project window. This lets you place regular tracks within specially created folders, just as you would organize your files on a computer. This allows you to perform editing on several tracks as one entity. Folder tracks can contain any type of track, including other folder tracks. This is very useful for cleaning up the track list, making working with many tracks more manageable. To create a folder track, just right-click here and select Add Folder Track. You can now drag your tracks into the folder track. To move a track out of the folder again, simply drag it outside the folder. To open-close a folder track, simply click on one of the expand and collapse folder buttons on the folder track, which is found here. As you can see, when we close all our folders, how organized our project window becomes. We can find and edit any sound we want on the fly and super quick, instead of going through an abundance of tracks trying to find that one track that we need to edit. Now that we've got our organization all set, let's start making our first UI game sound. But before we start designing our sound, we need to ask ourselves, what style of sound do I need for my action or game? In this case, we need a sound effect for Elon's meteor falling from the sky and crashing. Elon is based in space, so we need to create a spacey and futuristic type sound, like you would find on Star Wars or the vintage Space Invaders game. I remember that game. That was a great game. We will be using a lot of modulation type effects, like chorus and flanger, just to name a few, to achieve this type of sound. Let's open up Cubase and select Empty in the More tab. Place a folder in your desired location and name it My First Game Sound. Now click OK. Set your sample rate to 44.1 kHz and set your bit resolution to 24-bit and click OK. Next, let's import our sample sound, Low Quica, from our Assets folder by either dragging it into our project window like this, or by going to File, then Import, an audio file, and just locate the file and click Import. Let's play the file one time before we start. Wow, you'll notice that the sound is far from being futuristic and spacey. But don't worry, after we add the right effects, the sound will be just what we need. Let's drag our sample so that it's at bar 2, here. Now let's set our left and right markers so we can loop our sound later on by enabling the Range Select tool. To do this, press the 2 key on your keyboard or click on the Range Select tool in the toolbar here. Create a range from bar 2 to bar 3 by clicking and dragging from bar 2 to bar 3. After we have created our range, click on the P key on your keyboard. We have just created a range so we can loop later on. Now, to enable and disable our cycle feature, just click on the loop button on the transport bar, which is found here. Let's open our mixer by toggling the F3 key and open the edit window for our Kuika channel by clicking here. Toggle the first insert panel by clicking on the drop-down arrow found here to add our first chorus effect. Scroll down to the Steinberg folder, then Modulation, and select Chorus and click on it. Next, open the preset menu and choose the preset Fast Leslie. Change the following settings. Set the rate to 1/16 T. I recommend playing our sound in cycle mode and play with the different settings so you could see exactly what the chorus effect is doing to our sound. I recommend doing this for all the effects we will use. This way you get a better understanding and hands-on experience at what each of these plugins do, so you can have a better understanding of them. Next, add a mono delay in the second insert tab by scrolling down to the Steinberg folder, then Delay, and select Mono Delay. Set the delay to 1/8 D. This is the rate at which our delay repeats. The higher we go, the more it repeats per bar. Set the feedback to 9.6. Our feedback is how long we want the delay to repeat after our initially set delay. Set the low filter cut to 380. Set the high filter cut to 1200. And set the mix knob to 6.5. The mix knob is how much of the effect versus the dry signal we want. The higher the percentage, the more effect we will add. Preview your sound. You can also play with the different values to better understand and practice your use of delay. Okay, our sound is still far from where it's supposed to be, I know. But the next plugin, Ring Modulator, will get us very close to our sound. Insert a Ring Modulator plugin by clicking in the third Insert tab and scrolling to the Modulation tab in the Steinberg folder. Use the preset Decrypted. And now preview the sound. As you can see, our sound has transformed into a spatial, futuristic sound. However, our sound is a little thin and aggressive sounding. We will even out the sound with the next plugins that we will use. To smoothen out the sound and make it less piercing to our ears, a compressor will be used for this. Insert the FabFilter Pro C2 compressor by going to the fourth Insert tab and scrolling down to the FabFilter folder and select Pro C2. Use the following settings. Set the threshold to -18 by double-clicking on the threshold knob. You can also do this by turning the threshold knob. Set the ratio to 4:1. Set the style to classic. Set your attack to 0.13. And set the release to 307. Now let's A/B our sound with and without the compressor by disabling it and enabling it here. As you can hear, the sound with the compressor is not piercing anymore and has evened out our sound. But when we disable the compressor, we notice just how piercing the sound was. Learning how to use an audio compressor is one of the most important steps you can take to improve your music production. It was one of the very first things I learned how to do. Every day, even after over 15 years of experience, I'm still learning something new every day. Just remember to use compression for a reason. Don't just use compression for the sake of it. The need should not come before the action. For a more in-depth tutorial on audio compression, here is a great article by Sean Vincent. Now that we have smoothed out our sound, let's insert an EQ to fatten it up. We need to remove some unwanted frequencies and also boost some low mids. Toggle your fifth insert tab and scroll to your FabFilter folder. Then EQ and select FabFilter Pro Q2. To add an EQ point, just double-click on the EQ point line, which is found here. Let's add our first EQ point and boost 551 Hz to 5.3 dB by double-clicking on the frequency knob and typing in 551 Hz. Next, double-click the gain knob and set it to 5.3 dBs. Set the Q ratio to 1 by also double-clicking on it. The gain knob is how much of a boost and cut we want to add. The frequency is the tone control of the audio spectrum, which controls the bass, mids, and the treble frequencies. And the Q is the shape of the bell for your EQ curve. Next, let's set another EQ point by double-clicking on the line. Set the frequency knob to 3.5K by typing in 3500. Set our gain knob to -3.5 and set our Q to 1. Let's preview our sound. You'll see that the sound significantly improved by removing some harshness in the piercing frequencies and boosting some of the lower mids. This in turn has polished our sound. EQ has many benefits. Not only can it be used to correct signals which sound unnatural and allows you to boost or cut the volume of specified frequencies, but EQ can also be used as an effect. When used in context, EQ can be one of your most powerful tools in music production. It is also very powerful when used before an audio compressor to remove unwanted frequencies, thus making our compressor work less. Although, when boosting frequencies, it's best to use EQ after the compressor so that it doesn't react and tame our boosts. As you see here, I'm boosting frequencies with my EQ before the compressor, and it's affecting the action of my compressor. My compressor is reacting to my boosts, therefore undoing them. When I put the EQ after the compressor is not undoing my EQ changes. However, there is no rule about this. Sometimes using the EQ before the compressor for boosts is wanted. Just use your ears. Another important tip: you should always EQ in the context of a mix and not in solo, because that's where your sound has to be shaped for and sound good in the context. No one is going to be listening to one of your many layered sounds in solo or isolation mode. We have now finished sculpting our sound. The last step is reverb. Reverb will give us the depth and space needed for the intended sound. Open your 6th insert panel and scroll down to the Steinberg folder again. This time go to Reverb and select RoomWorks SE. Use the following settings. For pre-delay, select 2. Set our reverb time to 1.80. Set our diffusion to 75. Set our low-pass filter to 300. And set our high-pass filter to 10. The reason we are adding these equalization cuts in the reverb effects at 300 and 10 is because we don't want our reverb sounding cloudy and muddy. These frequencies tend to make our sound less focused and dull. Next, set the mix knob to 6. You can play around with the different presets and adjust them to taste. Just don't add too much, or our sound will lose its intended punch. Let's preview our sound. Isn't that amazing? How we went from a Cuica sound to this? Pretty cool. Now that we have created our intended sound, we need to mimic and accentuate the meteor falling from the sky. To achieve this, I will teach you a little trick. But guys, please don't tell anybody I taught you this. Go to our Insert tab of our Cuica channel and disable our mono delay. We will enable it later on once we finish with this trick. Next, let's export our sound. But first, set your left and right cursors to the start and end of our sound. To know where our sound ends, just play the sound and you'll see where the sound finishes. Zooming into our file will help us see exactly where to set our cursors. Next, click on the Range Select tool and set our range from the beginning to the end where our sound finishes, and press the P key like we did before. Go to File, Export, and Audio File. In the File Export window, check on Audio Track and Pool in the Import into Project window. This will automatically import our exported file back into our project instead of having to find it and importing the file manually. Next, find our imported file in the project window. Now that we found it, click on the Object Selection tool and click on the reversed file. Go to the menu bar, to Audio, then Process, and click on Reverse. This will reverse our sound. Create a fade in and fade out on the reverse sound by setting the mouse cursor to the top right of the file until you see 2 arrows. Now you can drag to fade in. Shorten the ending to taste by doing the same process as the fade in, but set the mouse cursor to the bottom of the file. Let me zoom in a little more so I can see exactly what I'm doing. I'm cutting the file so that we can cut our sound right when the peak at the end happens. The intro fade-in can be shortened to taste depending how much emphasis is needed to the meteor falling. Let's also create a fade at the beginning of the file. The last step is to move our reverse sound so that the ending aligns perfectly with the beginning of our original sound. This will mimic the meteor falling from the sky. If the sound is not moved to the right spot, it will not have the right effect. Let's not forget to enable our delay on our Quika channel now. You notice that adding the reverse sound enhances the effect of the meteor falling from the sky. Without this, it sounds like the meteor just hits the floor. It doesn't emphasize the falling from the sky. If you want to add or remove some emphasis on the meteor falling, on the reverse sound that we added, just toggle your mixer by pressing the F3 key. Here you'll see the volume for your reverse sound and the original sound. Just adjust to taste depending on how much emphasis you need. Voila guys! We have just created our intended sound from a sample that we wouldn't normally use by being creative with the right plugins and effects. While there is no exact setting that suits every situation, just use your ears and trust your judgment. By growing our experience from experimentation, reaching our intended sound will become second nature. Thank you for watching, and see you on our next sound tutorial, where we'll be creating our first UI sound.